Good evening and welcome to the COVID-19 update on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. First, the highlights. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka laments frustrating travelling requirements to and from Nigeria, asks federal government to make them easier. The Central Bank of Nigeria commences capture for disbursement of loans to businesses affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And shops, restaurants and schools shut down in Russia as government attempts to curb COVID-19. According to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, G20 countries have received 15 times more COVID-19 vaccine doses per capita than countries in sub-Saharan Africa. UNICEF disclosed this in a statement on Wednesday, quoting a new analysis conducted by science analytics company Affinity. According to the agency, the doses delivered to G20 countries are 15 times higher than doses delivered per capita to sub-Saharan Africa, 15 times higher than doses delivered per capita to low-income countries, and 3 times higher than doses delivered per capita in all other countries combined. The analysis exposes the severity of vaccine inequity between high-income and low-income countries, especially in Africa. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, says 166 new cases of COVID-19 have been reported across the country. In its update for October 28, they said the cases were reported in 15 states, including the FCT. Here's more on the virus update.
Additional persons in Nigeria have tested positive to COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. According to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, the latest figures were reported from 14 states and the FCT, indicating a rise from the figures reported earlier. The highest number of new infections is reported from Delta with 36 infections. The FCT had 22 cases. Rivers and Lagos had 21 and 20 cases, while Anambra had 18 and Ondo had 17 cases. Oyo started their single-digit parade with 8 cases. Kebbi reported 6, Enugu and Plateau reported 5 each, and Ebonyi and Kano came in with 3 and 2 cases. Bayelsa, Ekiti and Jigawa had 1 case each. Today's report includes backlogs from Kebbi, Enugu, Taraba and Lagos states. The total caseload in Nigeria has risen to 211,496. 127 patients have been discharged in the last 24 hours, increasing the total number of recoveries to 202,930. There were 2 additional deaths from COVID-19 complications reported in the last 24 hours, raising the total fatality number to 2,886. Currently, there are more than 5,600 active cases in Nigeria, while over 3.2 million samples have been tested so far. The latest update from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency shows that more than 5.6 million Nigerians have received the first shot of the COVID-19 vaccine, while over 2.9 million persons have been fully vaccinated. Globally, more than 6.8 million vaccines have been administered. In Africa, there are more than 8.4 million confirmed cases and over 218,000 deaths have been recorded across the countries on the continent. More than 245 million people all over the world have contracted COVID-19, while deaths are beyond 4.9 million.
And it appears the presentation of a special permission to leave or return to Nigeria is giving some air travelers difficult tasks to fulfill, especially as it relates to managing the COVID-19 pandemic. This is according to Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, who relayed his experience at the Charles de Gaulle Airport in France. Explaining his experience to journalists, he lamented the frustrations passengers go through at airports, especially Nigerians returning into the country.
I don't believe that I should require, or any Nigerian should require, special permission to enter his or her own country. What the majority of those questions has to do with COVID, I don't understand. I went through it again. Some of the questions repeated I'm telling you that at one stage, 6 Air France staff were working on various computers to generate this permit for which payment have been made. Nobody is saying you shouldn't take the necessary precautions. Other nations do it, but I don't believe that other nationals are, not humiliated is the wrong word, no, I just obstructed the way we are. I understand that some other West African countries have similar regulations. You have to go to the portal, fill this, fill that. But if this thing is not 100% proof, why should we be punished because some people are technologically inefficient and yet they're imposing these technological requirements on passengers? It's not a pleasant sight to see your fellow Nigerians lying on couches. They can't go in, they can't go out, they're trapped in limbo. I think that's wrong. And so whoever is responsible for these funds should proceed to design something easier for humanity to fulfill, and also to have backup situations. When technology breaks down, human intelligence should come to the rescue.
Away from COVID-19 and travel, the Central Bank of Nigeria has started receiving applications for its credit facility aimed at supporting households and micro, small and medium enterprises affected by the pandemic. Speaking in Calabar, the Cross River State capital, the technical assistant to the Vice President on Media explains that the aim of the loan is to aid those affected by COVID-19 and also to create a means for youth employment.
Gathered here are residents of Cross River State who are applying for the federal government's loan to boost their flagging businesses. Also here are those who want to start a skill in order to meet their daily needs. The loan is to mitigate effects of the pandemic on livelihoods and comes in categories ranging from 500,000 to 3 million naira with a 3-year maturity date. It's meant to reduce unemployment across the country by creating a means of livelihood for the majority of the youth.
As you are taking the loan, you are not expected to pay any form of interest on the principal amount being given. And so we realize over time that the real people that actually have genuine need for these monies do not have access to the internet. The market women, the elderly people, and even the young people who are, maybe some of them are illiterate. So what we have done is to bring it closer to the people.
Some participants are skeptical based on previous experiences.
This is not the first, it's going to be the last form that we have filled concerning empowerment and the grant, yet there is not always positive response.
I just pray the federal government should pay the money, or should the federal government should try and empower youth, because we youth are suffering too much.
Though the loan has not yet been disbursed, some are hopeful that they will benefit and are grateful to the federal government for the gesture.
It will help me to manage with my shop where, because of this COVID-19, some things have spoiled. I'm grateful for what government has done for us.
CBN is ensuring these monies will be put to good use by procuring vendors to purchase equipment and supplies according to each beneficiary's business need rather than risk misappropriation of cash.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, can cause a wide range of signs and symptoms. The most common are fever, dry cough and tiredness. But are the symptoms dependent on the virus variants? Well, joining us to talk more about this is Chika Onuama, who's a Chief Research Fellow at the Nigerian Institute of Research, NIMA. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Millicent. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Great to have you again.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, tell us, how are the new coronavirus, that would be the variants, yes, the latest, how are they different from the old ones?
They have quite a lot of differences. The genome is changing, you know, in relation to what it's encountering the people and all that. But personally, I'm not so worried about the variants as I'm worried about the people. If you can, you mentioned the report you took just before this. You said it was Calabar. I was going through, only one person was wearing the face mask. Only one person. Only one lady on striped white and black. Every other person, no mask. And you see, these are the critical things, simple things that can help us, and see how jam-packed they are. And when you finish this, you go back home, you say, oh, you have malaria. It's not malaria. These are simple. That's why you see other states taking over, because Lagos is a bit more conscious. Delta is now on top. You know, even as I was looking this morning at the waves using the NCDC data, there was a bit of a spike yesterday, 27th. It went very high. The cases went very high. So it's something we need to all watch. If you go to that report, only one person was wearing masks. Then the issue of variants, that's part of what can cause a spike. Maybe when there are, what people are worried about, the ones that can maybe escape previous antibodies, whether they are from vaccines or maybe from naturally developed, whether you had it before or not. Those kind of things can happen. But the one I'm very excited about, it's the people. I've been trying to talk about this, for us to do a lot more research on it. Why are there people who are severe, why some are asymptomatic, and some are in between? You know, some of these things are critical for us to know. There's a paper that just came out 2 days ago. They found what they call ADAM9, that it's a gene in those who are severe. Their body is overexpressing that gene. It was published in Science Translational. And they found it in young people without comorbidities, young people that have severe COVID. That was people they found. And then now you used it and checked it in other groups of people, and they found it out. So these are some of the things I also want us to also be looking at, even from our own in our own people, because these are different for different populations. I know, for instance, also blood group O has a lower risk. So you may see people in the same families, and they have differences. Maybe they are all exposed. One does not come down, one comes down. These are a few other things. But the key critical thing I want to, if they didn't take home from all of this, I will say to them, let's remember to wear the masks. Take the simple precautions, washing of our hands, the distances, and all that. I had a young student here in our office. He got it. He said, oh, it was malaria. He was away for a while. By the time he could test, so he was positive. His father got it. But his father was not that lucky. He had to go to isolation center for over 14 days. His blood pressure was, I think it was say 180 or something. So young people, remember to wear your mask. You may not feel something, but when you go back home to your parents, your elderly ones. Let me stop there for now. Thank you.
You're right. I mean, that's really what we keep talking about on the program, the whole consciousness. But like you said, even the NCDC officials would say that it's up to the states, the sub-nationals, to continue to drive home the message about how the virus is still with us. But some can argue that based on what the rest of the world is facing and our figures here, that the worst might be over, and this might also be affecting behavior. But that's another issue. On the variants and the symptoms, what can you tell us? Because it's quite interesting what you said about the blood group and the genotype and how it affects people that have come down with COVID, the different reactions. But I guess research is still ongoing with a number of these issues. But in terms of the variants, the ones we've seen so far, Delta being quite a lot around the world, are we going to see newer variants from Delta? And also, your take on the vaccinations and the variant?
So variants always develop. In fact, COVID is a lot less than something like HIV. Variants will always keep coming up. As long as the virus is interacting with human genome, variants will always come up. So what that means is just that, let's say in a population of people that have different makeups, their genetic makeups, so one is less severe or more severe, and the ones, how it's interacting with the people, if you don't have what it needs, I'll give you an example. There's this receptor we call ACE receptor. It's something on the surface of the cell that the virus needs to latch onto to enter the cell. If your body has less of it on the surface, less of the virus will be able to enter and infect, and you won't have so much severity. Now, some of those things, some people have it more, some people don't have it. So these are some of the things where the variants will keep coming. So those that may not need that ACE receptor to go into the cell will now survive and overtake those who need those receptors. So as these viruses interact with the human genome, there will always be variants coming up.
All right. Well, this is a good place to leave it. We hope we can have you join us again on the program to talk more about this pandemic that is still ravaging the world. Thank you so much. We've been speaking to the Chief Research Fellow, Nigerian Institute of Research, NIMA, Mr. Chika Onwama. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
The White House has outlined new rules for foreign travelers to the U.S. as flight restrictions lift for the first time since the pandemic began in 2020. The plan to reopen the U.S. border next month to foreign flights includes a requirement that almost all foreign visitors be vaccinated against COVID. Meanwhile, the U.S. continues to roll out vaccine initiatives and mandates despite many countries across the world still having major vaccine shortages. Our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, has more on the most recent vaccine initiatives in the U.S.
The United States Food and Drug Administration has approved the recommendation for children between the ages of 5 and 12 to be vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine.
So this concludes the vote. Out of 18 voting members, 17 voted yes, and we had 1 abstain.
The most recent recommendation puts children's vaccinations in the final approval stage with the Center for Disease Control, who will meet next Tuesday or Wednesday to vote.
It's important that we continue to vaccinate as many adults as possible to provide protection to children in the community, especially those who may not be eligible for vaccination themselves. We must continue to help our children follow the prevention measures we know will keep them safe, continuing to wear masks in schools and other indoor settings, choosing outdoor settings, avoiding crowds and poorly ventilated spaces, and washing our hands often. Right now, there are over 60 million Americans eligible for vaccination who are not yet vaccinated, leaving themselves and children around them vulnerable. I think there's urgency because we're seeing disease in children, we've seen deaths in children, and we've seen long COVID, as Dr. Fauci demonstrated, in children.
The next wave of vaccinations comes with more protests against vaccine mandates, as many states are beginning to announce that school children will be required to take the COVID-19 vaccine.
Our children, save our children, save our children.
While some parents are hesitant, the United States anticipates that it will begin vaccinating children by the end of next week. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channel Television News.
And Maria Bird is with us now. Hi, Maria. So the FDA is one step close to approving vaccination for children. Some 28 million more kids aged 5 to 11. What more can you tell us about the process?
Hello, thank you for having me. Yes, you're exactly correct. They are that much closer. We are now in a position that the FDA has approved the recommendation. We're now looking for the CDC, which will meet on either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, to be able to make the full approval and the final approval. And once that happens, you could see children beginning to be vaccinated as early as the end Thursday or Friday of next week. So we are just about 7 days to 8 days away from actually potentially seeing all children between the ages of 5 and 12 eligible for the vaccination.
Have you spoken to any parents? I mean, are they glad that, this is coming up? And, perhaps some of the children themselves, what they think, what they feel about it all?
You're exactly. There are parents that are a bit concerned. I mean, there's obviously been studies that have come out and information that has come out about potential side effects, especially as it relates to the males and the heart. And I think that is a major concern for many parents. But I think that parents are weighing the options. They're saying my child could become very sick. And obviously we know there are very unfortunate situations of children being hospitalized due to the virus, and or give them a vaccine And there's a very small likelihood that anything will happen as a result of the vaccine. And so that's really the options, and that's really where the mindsets of parents are. And so you'll see the majority of parents, especially for those who have been vaccinated themselves, they will likely be giving their child the vaccine. And many school districts are going to be requiring it as well. Unlike what we see with the adult vaccination process, you will probably see school buildings having, large campaigns and outreach efforts and having vaccines available right there, whether it's in front of or within the school buildings. So this is going to probably be a very different process and a very swift process in comparison to what we've seen with adult vaccination rates.
Talking about adults' vaccination rates, in terms of the numbers, are a lot of people still getting vaccinated?
There are. I mean, the mandates have obviously pushed many people to get vaccinated because they want to keep their jobs. We're in an economic crisis as well in the U.S. We've obviously been able to stabilize the stock market at some level, but the economy is still suffering. And so people want to keep their jobs to ensure they can keep roofs over their head and they can keep food on the table. So that is pushing up many more people to getting vaccinated, along with the fact that I think that people are starting to come on board with, now that we're at the booster phase and people have had the vaccine now for 4, 5, 6, and some almost even it'll be a year come January for some medical professionals that have been vaccinated. So they're coming on board in that regard.
So on the flip side, for the anti-vaxxers, it seems like it's still controversial to tell them, people to get vaccinated in the U.S.
Yes, we still have a very, sizable amount of individuals that are very much against the vaccines. Now, you have to remember in the U.S., you still have individuals that don't agree with vaccines, period. There's an anti-vaxxer, movement that has gone on prior to COVID-19. They don't trust, they don't believe in some of the vaccines, and they've seen where some of them have unfortunately cause, impacts on children that are potentially tied to vaccinations. So that group has been very vocal. We also know that the U.S. is a country built on the focus of independence, and I think many people are not happy with mandates and are looking at this as a impeachment on their rights and an infringement on their ability to have the right to choose.
And Maria, about the U.S. and the plans for foreign travelers, as it opens its borders next month, how are they preparing, and are there perhaps any extra measures? This is also to reduce the variants from coming into the country and to protect travelers.
Well, November the 8th is a big day, and I think that will be a day where you'll begin to see now economies, especially in cities and states that have heavy tourist populations, are looking forward to it. As we've stated before, with some of the COVID testing that's involved, the vaccination requirements, even many stores and buildings are requiring vaccination cards to be able to enter. So you'll probably see a greater emphasis on that, especially in big cities like New York City, that has implemented many of those measures. But we are also in a position where some states have moved to where they believe they've met the goals for their vaccine requirements and the percentage of individuals with vaccines and the number of cases, the low number of cases that are being hospitalized and the number of cases per day, that they are not requiring masks inside a building. So, if we begin to lax on some of these regulations and mandates that have been in place for quite some time, as we begin to introduce international visitors, that could potentially create a challenge. So the hope is that November the 8th is a day that will allow for the tourist community and for the U.S. to reopen, and that we're able to keep in place some of the measures that have already been established.
All right, thanks, Maria Bird, our Washington, D.C. correspondent, joining us live there. And Russians eager to begin the 1 week off work as recommended by the government to curb spread of the coronavirus pandemic have shut shops, restaurants and schools. Only essential shops like supermarkets, pharmacies are being allowed to open in Moscow, while food outlets are only providing takeaways. Here's more on the global update.
The new lockdown in Russia would also affect transportation. Moscow residents today use the city metro as usual,
before they will be forced to remain indoors. The Russian capital brought in its strictest lockdown measures since June 2020 as hospitals confront a rising wave of cases that has sent one-day pandemic deaths to record highs. The partial lockdown, in which only essential shops like pharmacies and supermarkets are allowed to remain open, while schools and state kindergartens are shut, comes ahead of a nationwide week-long workplace shutdown from October 30. Ukraine's police released a video showing a doctor seated at his desk while a masked officer counts bundles of cash found stashed in the office, $12,000 worth in total. The televised raid this week on a doctor's surgery in the region is one of hundreds of criminal investigations publicized by the authorities in a clampdown on a flourishing black market in forged vaccine and COVID-19 tested documents. After a lull in the summer, Ukraine is experiencing some of the highest death rates from COVID-19 in the world. The Chinese mainland on Wednesday reported 23 new locally transmitted cases. Of the new local cases, 8 were in Gansu, 7 in Inner Mongolia, 3 in Beijing, 2 in Ningxia, 1 each in Heilongjiang, Shandong, and Sichuan. 1 each in Beijing and Sichuan were reconfirmed to be active cases from asymptomatic cases. Finally, Moderna Incorporated's vaccine will start to be used in children and teens in the United States within weeks, according to its chief executive, ahead of a health conference which begins virtually from November 15th to the 18th. Moderna CEO Stefan Bancel says, based on dialogue with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, he believes his company's vaccine will be authorized for 12 to 17-year-olds in the next few weeks. Moderna applied for U.S. authorization of its shot for those aged 12 to 17 in June. It published positive data from a clinical trial in children ages 6 to 11 this week, but has not yet submitted an application to regulators for that age group.
Well, they say vaccines alone are not enough to keep the pandemic away. Continue to take responsibility. You can visit our website for more updates, a better understanding of the pandemic. You can find our breaking stories there. And also our top story, Lagos introducing an administrative charge for private facilities administering COVID-19 vaccines. It's channelstv.com. That's the program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Stay healthy.